Okay, for this segment, our cancer survivor is suddenly a political analyst. Actually, Ferdie Ramos has been in the political scene from the very beginning of his career as a media person. And joining now this panel is Mr. Rod Capunan, who has been with us once before. He is now a very popular international columnist, and he just has had some articles published in international newspapers recently. And we are now in the segment of the Asian news and analysis. The first one I will read is about anti-drug efforts, since President Duterte is already on a crusade, also in a campaign to eliminate illegal drugs from the Philippine scene. And this one is from the BRICS Post. This is a news site of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the alliance. BRICS to bolster joint anti-drug efforts. And BRICS heads of drug control agencies have met in New Delhi last July 7 to coordinate the counter-narcotics efforts of member countries. This is Indian Minister for Home Affairs Rajnath Singh said at the meeting, "Today the drug business generates the highest illegal fund flows and leads to narco-terrorism, which poses a serious threat to global security and endangers peace, health, and stability across the regions." And so I wanted to bring this up to reflect on what is happening also in the Philippines, and ask our analyst how the Duterte campaign against drugs is going. Let's first ask Ferdie. Have you had time to observe what is going on in the country?
Yes, from the start of Lim Seng.
Lim Seng, that is.
Yes, the Chinese participation on this drug trade is a black eye between the relationship between the two countries.
Okay. Okay, and but right now China is part of BRICS and part of the campaign against this. No, Rod, what can you say?
Well, actually, I'm just curious because the United States has always been furnishing us with information about terrorists. Then most of these terrorists has something to do with politics, ideology, or fanaticism. But what is strange about this information, intelligence information furnished by the United States, that it has nothing to do with drugs. Then all of a sudden, Duterte is pushing hard with his anti-drug campaign. And it turned out that many of them were generals, officers in the armed forces.
Yeah.
These officers, if we have to observe, have close links with the United States USDA, Drug Enforcement Agency. And yet, this agency have failed to furnish the administration about our policemen involved in drugs. This is something unusual, strange. But when it comes to terrorism, anti-communist, people who are identified with the ISIS and with the communists, mabilis sila. It's so fast. But this with respect to drug syndicates, nothing. You have not heard anything about that.
Yeah. Well, let me read some more details. In 2014, the United Nations reported a 60% growth in Afghan land used for opium poppy cultivation since 2011, up to 200,000 or 209,000 hectares. The estimated $3 billion value of Afghan heroin and morphine represents some 15% of Afghan GDP. Afghanistan is under whose control today? Isn't it the American forces? So, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, estimates that Southeast Asia's trade in heroin and methamphetamine was worth 31 billion US dollars in 2013. In 2015, China seized a record 36.5 tons of methamphetamine, the UNODC said. Now, of course, we want to focus on our drug problem here in the Philippines. And apparently, it is down to the barangay level now that the impact of Duterte's campaign and shock and awe methods have, and we have heard this from our staff and so on, that at the barangay level, many of the drug addicts are turning themselves in. So it seems to be a good sign. Ferdie, can you add to that? Would you like to add to that?
I have certain doubts on that.
Yeah, why? Why?
Because as a veteran newsman,
Uh-huh.
I know for a fact that policemen and these pushers and users, they know each other.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
My apprehension is that they are being killed to silence them.
Well, in fact, I think even the Duterte government has said that they suspect that some of these eliminations are being done by those behind the scene themselves. No? Rod?
I think they are fairly right. They are being preempted.
Yeah.
Liquidating them will result in a difficulty of trying to trace all the source of these drugs. Now, you mentioned Afghanistan. Take note that when the United States started bombing Afghanistan, many of the people in the rural areas went to the cities because for lack of livelihood, income, everything was destroyed. But after they abandoned their farmlands, all were converted into an opium plantation. That tripled the production of opium in Afghanistan.
And that's confirmed by the UN statistics.
Yes. And,
okay, let's move on to the next item in the news, which is really a very, very big concern for Asia. And this is about the installation in South Korea, the impending installation in South Korea of the missile defense system, the THAAD. The THAAD is the, we'll take a look at what THAAD means in a while, but this is the deployment in South Korea of these defense missiles, which Russia and China are issuing warnings about. Now, I think it's important to mention that some technical issues about the THAAD, which disputes this claim that this is a defense against North Korean missiles. Military effectiveness of the THAAD, THAAD, operation in South Korean soil has been in doubt as the advanced U.S. missile defense system is designed to track and destroy missiles at a high altitude of 40 to 150 kilometers. Hundreds of DPRK missiles targeting South Korea will fly at a much lower altitude of less than 20 kilometers. And so the Chinese and the Russians are saying this is not really aimed at North Korea. This is just a cover story, and it is really aimed against China and Russia. What would you like to add to that, if any? Rod?
well, actually, what the Americans, when the United States decided to install these missiles in South Korea, the Chinese will have difficulty in trying to convince North Korea to dismantle its nuclear program. That's one thing. And the idea that advanced by the United States that a denuclearized North Korea will keep the peninsula far safer is not true. We can only cite the 1991 agreement between the United States and the former Soviet Union. In that agreement, the United States promised that after the fall of the so-called Eastern Bloc, the U.S. and NATO will not expand beyond the existing border called Eastern Europe. And they will not ask any of these countries under NATO, under then the Warsaw Pact, to join NATO. But the United States violated that. They advanced eastward, they installed military bases, in fact, up to Kazakhstan, and now they are in Poland, they are in the Baltics. Now, there was one political analyst who said that North Korea will implode. It's about to implode. But that's...
They've been saying that for the past 30, 40 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
You know, I have to be honest that the role of the Chinese with respect to the nuclearization of North Korea is something like ambivalent. I'm not saying that the Chinese are not serious. they are serious in wanting North Korea to dismantle its nuclear weapons, but they are having a thought, that serious doubt, denuclearizing North Korea and allowing North Korea to be overrun by the South in the process of what we call integration, in an economic development between two states. The more progressive country will absorb the less progressive country. So, in that case, it is South Korea that will absorb North Korea because economically it's far more advanced, far more prosperous. Now, the effect is this. American nuclear weapons, such as, and including these missiles called THAAD, will advance beyond the 38 parallel, and China will not be happy with that. So with Russia.
Yeah. Well, that THAAD means terminal high velocity or terminal high altitude area defense. That's the THAAD. And again, North Korea is no threat to the United States itself,
Definitely.
Definitely, So, and like the deployment of the defense, missile defense on the borders of Russia in the European theater, this is a perceived as a threat against both China and Russia. Yeah, go ahead, Rod.
Do you know that Russia today is practically being encircled by missiles, NATO missiles, that is from the Baltic down to Turkey? Up to now, they do not mention that their intention of installing these missiles in Eastern Europe up to Turkey is not for the United States, but it is for Iran. Nobody, it is for Iran. They said, we are preparing this because Iran is a threat.
Yeah, and that's why Putin was laughing at that.
They never mentioned Russia.
Yeah.
And they never, the same thing in Asia. It is against North Korea.
Okay. Final news item, the third one. Philippines willing to share South China Sea resources with China, says the Department of Foreign Affairs Chief Yasay. Can you say something about that?
That is a right, right orientation for our country and China. As I've said repeatedly, we do not have the capability to develop the islands that we are claiming. If ever the decision will be that we own that, what will we do with it?
Now we have had 9 islands for the past 30 years or 40 years. What did we do with it?
What will we do with it? Do we have the capability to develop it? So we'll be dependent on the Americans, will be borrowing money.
And if we are dependent on the American and the British, it will be like Malampaya, 90% for them, 10% for the Filipinos.
We'll be paying for our debts and then we will be buying the products from them.
That's
what do we get? And
Okay.
China is offering us a share of what they will develop.
50-50 at the very minimum.
Not necessarily 50-50, but without any investment on our part, except a recognition that allowing them to develop the island.
Okay, we're run out of time for this segment. We can continue this in our Philippines-China focus, which is relevant to the relationship of the two countries, especially now with the impending July 12 announcement of the arbitration panel's conclusions, which Rod Capunan will help us understand. Okay, let's take this break.